The master artists of the Renaissance were considered extremely advanced in their techniques, like the Flemish artists Jan and Hubert van Eyck. The onset of the Van Eycks is the most important landmark in the history of painting in Northern Europe. They opened an entirely new chapter of painting with their revolutionary use of oils. It is alleged that the evidence has been obliterated in understanding the development of their unique methods. Methods that include extremely thin layers of paint, in many cases 50 times thinner than a human hair, meaning that the artist had to apply layer upon layer to achieve the desired effect. And this was at a time when they allegedly ground all the various colors by hand, and they had to produce all the different shades by themselves. But maybe the evidence has been disguised or altered. Take the Arnolfini wedding painting, for example, painted in 1434. Probably the most realistic painting of the Renaissance. Van Eyck achieved an extreme level of realism. It looks like a photograph with its fantastic detail and the way the lighting is evenly rendered throughout the painting. And the tiniest of background objects are portrayed in exquisite detail. And the strange statement that Jan van Eyck added along with his signature to the painting, "I was there." And the fact that there are 2 extra people in the painting across from the bride and groom. One is reminded of Project Looking Glass technology, where the participant can see various points in time and space.
Well, this is what it looks like. This is real. This is yesterday and today is the very first public unveiling in a public presentation of Project Looking Glass. A human being is about this tall. This is built in underground bases. It is colossal in size. And what happens is when you fire this thing up, these rings start going in all different directions. It shields off the barrel of water inside, which is just like your pineal gland. The water inside flips over into time-space, which then captures argon gas, captures visual images, and this is what it looks like. It becomes huge, glowing, all the way out to these posts, which are used as stabilizers for the energy field. Now, it doesn't start out with an image of the Earth. That's just there as a placeholder, although you could see the whole Earth like that if you wanted to. That's not usually what happens. Well, contact, right? We have been given the technology right in front of our faces in the movies. They just don't tell you what it's for.
So essentially, they are there at that point in time and space. Looking glass technology has been described as a type of artificial intelligence. Perhaps that is why Jan van Eyck clearly signed this painting with his signature saying he was there and saw this scene. The visitors were the people who had jumped to that section in space-time. And he was able to capture that moment in space-time in extreme detail, somehow rendering it to the canvas medium. Or maybe an artificial intelligence was given a prompt to create a painting. Another Van Eyck painting, the Madonna in the church, could represent this theory. This is another painting of exquisite detail. The entire painting exhibits extreme realism when examined throughout. Except for one small detail, the Christ child's arm, which resembles a block of wood or lump of clay. It is not in proportion with the child. It is in line with the head and not with the shoulder, as it should be to be anatomically correct. So why would this be when the entire painting is extremely lifelike? Could it be the case of an AI rendered painting? When asked about the situation, the artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, discussed the various kinds of AI art fails in rendering true-to-life pictures. In particular interest was the subject of model architecture and representation limits. because AI doesn't store a picture pixel by pixel like Photoshop. AI models convert and generate images by representing visuals in a kind of compressed mathematical space called latent space, which represents patterns, textures, shapes, and colors as numbers. This latent space is highly abstract. It knows patterns like round shape plus skin color equals maybe a face, but it doesn't know the physics of a face or how anatomy works. And that compression loses detail and structure, and the AI tries to reconstruct full images from those compressed patterns, but the reconstruction isn't perfect. This can lead to distortions, melted objects, or lumps of texture that look like real things, but aren't actually coherent images. Extra fingers, melted objects, weird reflections means the AI is trying to guess from an incomplete or compressed representation. When asked the question, suppose AI renders an image perfect with fine detail except for one detail, an arm on a human, for example, that looks like a block of wood. Is that an example of what you're talking about? The AI responded, exactly. That is a textbook example of the problem caused by model architecture plus representation limits. Then there is the idea that these paintings perhaps held mystical powers. The Van Eyck painting, the Altarpiece of Ghent, is one of these. This enormous work, weighing more than 2 tons, features 12 interior panels. According to art historians, it also has a distinction of being the most stolen artwork, having been reported taken 7 times. During World War II, Adolf Hitler believed that the work was a coded map to lost Christian relics that would provide supernatural powers to those who possessed them. So he stole it. He believed these supernatural powers would eventually lead to his winning the Second World War. Which begs the question, did Hitler know about a particular timeline because he knew of the Project Looking Glass technology involved in these works?
One of the caveats that I do have some personal information that I did get personally involved in was some information that had to do with the Stargates and Looking Glass. And eventually we're pushed into this bottleneck of time, no matter which choice we make. At a certain point, after they're done hearing the computer tell them this is what's going to happen over and over and over and over again, all they become focused on is how do we fix it?
But they don't
However,
know.
they don't actually have control over what happens. They only have control over the reaction, and it seems that no matter what they try to do to cause their desired reaction, it's going to have an opposite effect.
Interesting.
Now, it's much, much easier for me to explain today what that process is as opposed to back then. But if I had to give it a name, I would say it's the awakening process. It's an evolution of consciousness that cannot, will not, and no matter what decisions or possibilities are injected into the equation, eventually it all resolves down to us all learning the truth and becoming aware of this massive dam of lies that has been built that keep us from knowing massive volume of information that we should otherwise possess. Not only did they not want people to use it anymore because they knew it was just going to burp out the same thing, but at the same time they didn't want anybody else to know what it was saying, I'm sure. Because
That they would lose control.
Because that information was of a monumental concern when I was in the military about how to prevent this inevitability. Now, at first I thought it was end of the world. Now I see end of the world as end of their world.
well said.